We have a visiting Rotarian and his wife, who is also a visiting Rotarian. My apologies, Penny, from the Crossbirds Club and from the stage on, Bill and Peggy Moss.
Tom.
There's Tom Cooper. Tom Cooper is good.
Thank you. My guest today is Kyle Chapman, and Kyle's now an attorney here in Norman with R.J. Harris, and he's also a major in the Army National Guard, and visiting for the first time, so welcome, Kyle.
And Karina Crawford.
Hi there, this is Kate Blackman. She is our assistant. She just started working with Norman Nurse. We are assistant. She's helping us with some policies and procedures that we have going. And I'm super excited to have her. I've known her since she was born.
Welcome, Katie. Thank you for bringing guests, and I'm happy to see this room filled again. I'll just let you know, last week was a little scarce, but I'm really glad y'all got back to your routines quickly and enjoyed this again. I'll try not to mention the game. Quote of the day, I'll move on from that. I didn't know you watched Party. I was rooting for Boomer Sooner. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. The only way to be truly satisfying is to do what you believe is great work. From Steve Jobs. Okay. Now we know why we have a visitor from across the timber, just because Phil Moss has an announcement. Come on up, Phil.
It's nice to get the single clap acknowledgement that I was a former member of this. It's good for us to be here. Many of you know that Cross Timber is kind of our signature project. We provide dictionaries to all the third graders in basically in Norman and the surrounding communities. And we do that, we raise money through our Outback lunch. So here's my pitch. If you plan on eating lunch next Tuesday or Wednesday, I've got a deal for you. The Outback lunch, your choice of steak or chicken with the trimmings that go with that. We start serving at 11, we stop at 2 on both those days. We'd really like to have support of members of this club. If you plan to eat on that day, I hope you will eat at Outback. And I've got the tickets, cash or check, Venmo, or if you'd like to pay online, I can send you a bill that you can pay that way too. So,
Carry that.
oh, that's right. You can also carry it out. It's not just dine in. And for those that really need it delivered, I'll bring it to you. Tickets are $20 a piece, and a good portion of that will go to our project to fund dictionaries for kids in the area. So thanks for the time. Yeah.
Where is it?
It's Outback Steakhouse. They're on Interstate Drive. So I'll be around, hanging around. I hope to see many of you there.
How about the tickets? How about the tickets?
All right. If I was an auctioneer, I'd be doing that.
Yeah. I'll pay you after the meeting. All right, thank you, Phil, for that. We appreciate y'all coming to visit too. So I do want to give a shout out to the Team 2 for pancakes. Who was on Team 2 yesterday in pancakes? The only thing I have to say is I went to cheer y'all on and help you out, and you left me with the dishes. So moving forward, please know that when we have a team go in, we are responsible for doing the dishes while we're there. So please don't leave the president to do it by ourselves. But I love y'all a lot, and y'all did a great job. So it really was fun, but I really did have to say your decisions. All right, Amy Rieger has a quick announcement.
I thought you wanted me to tell a joke. I guess it was.
Okay, okay.
For many years, Karen and I have watched the Rose Bowl parade, like most of you, and have enjoyed always seeing the Rotary float, which is on there. So I wonder who can sign up to decorate the float. So we went through the process, and they did a background check, I'm sure. And so Karen and I are gonna go and work on the float this year, and for another $5,000, I think you can ride on the float. So we might have a love offering later today. We can do that. So, no, but if you want to do that, you can sign up. There's a way to do it. They have a Rotary Rose Float Committee. Anyway, it looked like a lot of fun. Well, my son lives out there, so they always go the night before and look at all the floats. So he was encouraging me one year. He said, "You ought to come out here and do this." So this is kind of scratching off the bucket list. So if you want to do it, talk to me and I'll tell you how you sign up to get on there.
I just think that's an amazing opportunity. So he told me about it. I saw him at dinner a few weeks ago, whatever, and I was like, well, keep me posted on that. But I just think that's a great opportunity that we could participate in if you're interested. And I wanted other people to know about it. So thank you for sharing that, and we look forward to a program when you get back after your experience. Rotary After Hours tonight at the Standard. It is on Gray Street. If you've been up and down Gray Street lately, it's kind of under construction zone, so please park. You go turn on Crawford, and their parking lot is on the side of Crawford. We did invite some Norman Next members to come as well, so we'll have a good mix of people, so we want to have a good crowd there. I do think it's a beautiful fall day, so we can sit outside and really enjoy the weather and each other's company. So bring guests, bring friends. It's just a great introduction into Rotary, and it's a good fellowship opportunity. Latour de Vin, we did reopen the grant application, and on some of your tables only had 5 packets. I put a printed copy of the Latour de Vin grant application in case you needed a printed copy. You did get emailed a copy a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago now, I believe. For me, if you're interested or know a nonprofit that is interested in applying, please make sure they get that. The deadline is coming up really fast. I think it's on the 21st of October. Joan says I'm correct. Yay. And the last announcement, over half the club wasn't here last, good time, Rotary Road Rally. Y'all weren't here last week, so I'm going to tell you now that it's projected at the moment to, that we have exceeded our goal, but we definitely need all of you that have your tickets that maybe you haven't paid for yet. If you need to send that in, we're including the ticket sales from our club members in our net profits that we're expecting that everyone is going to be a cheerleader and support us on. With that said, we expect to have exceeded our goal and have raised $27,000 from the fundraiser. Everyone did an amazing job. The committee was huge. We're going to have a wrap-up meeting in a week or so when we all can finally get that back on our schedules. But what a great success. But we do need the people that are out there struggling to help us keep that goal that high. Please help us out to meet those needs. It'll help us expand what we can do in the community, help with more bikes or e-readers, or help the students more in the community if we do exceed the goal. So we're very excited about that. And with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Crandon to introduce our speaker today.
I think that was one more clap than you got, Phil, so I'm right there with you, buddy. All right. By the way, I need to get some tickets from you. All right. I am ecstatic to hear about this next presentation. Sorry, no pressure either. Okay. We have had this young lady with us before. We get her in a new capacity this time. Last time she was here, she was talking about her love and her passion, which is Wild Care Oklahoma, and what she does with animals and the great work she does. Like most of us, though, she raises her hand and volunteers too much, probably. And a couple of years ago, City of Norman, as we started working on, it's going to pop up here in about 2 seconds, right there. So we started working on the infrastructure master plan. They said, "Here, would you help with this?" And she said, "Sure, why not?" And she is the co-chair of what you just saw, AIM Norman. She's going to talk to you about the process and where they're headed and what the master plan may look like. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm delighted to have you back here.
introduction, and I'm really happy to be back with you today to talk specifically about AIM Norman. As Stephen said, I am most of the time, or I guess 2 years ago I could have said most of the time, Executive Director of Wildcare. Little did I know that this assignment would become a second job in addition to running Wildcare. So anyway, AIM Norman, as Stephen said, is our area infrastructure master plan for the city of Norman. And so this is a process where we're trying to create our land use plan starting from 2025 through 2045. And so it's comprehensive, it's citizen-led, hopefully citizen engaged, and that's part of why I'm here today, is to let you all know about it and ways that you'll be able to continue to provide input into it. And so, so I'm just going to kind of go back to the beginning. In 2022, the mayor called me and asked if I would serve on this committee, this like land use steering committee, and I said, I don't know anything about land use. He's like, oh, you'll be great, it'll be fun. Well, it took about a year to kind of get the group launched, the group being the steering committee. And the steering committee is comprised of at least 2 citizens from each of the wards in the city of Norman. It was the council members, or in my case, the mayor, who basically asked people to serve in that capacity. And that's just one of the ways that citizens are involved. So we meet every single month. We're subject to the Open Meetings Act, so anyone can come to our meetings. We actually kind of wrestle through what goes into creating a land use map for Norman. And so there were kind of 3 drivers that really led us to needing to do this now. One was just the projected population growth in Norman. And so, you know, we looked at a bunch of different models that our consultants did, and just as an aside, the city of Norman did engage with 2 consulting firms, RDG, which is based in Omaha, national in scope, as well as Garber, which has an office here. Garber handling kind of the technical engineering side, and RDG leading the kind of the planning community engagement side, the lead consultant. And they were selected by a group of citizens and staff. So anyway, we started about a year ago, I guess, and the first driver was the population change. So we looked at a bunch of models, as I said, and it was, I'm gonna go ahead and get us caught up on where we are. Okay, so the first thing was the population change, and we went ahead and decided to go with a conservative, which means kind of like worst case scenario of people moving into Norman is the worst case scenario for you. Population growth, so we were kind of betting on planning for as many people as we could possibly imagine based on, you know, past growth rate moved in. And so that gets us to a population of 185, almost 186,000 people. The real thing that means is we're going to be really short in terms of housing units. I mean, we're already experiencing that now, like people not being able to access housing that they can afford and sustain. And so that's kind of like one of the #1 pressures, for lack of a better way of saying it, on the plan, is making sure that we get the housing. So that was driver #1. Driver #2 is the fact that the plan that the city of Norman uses right now to make decisions about like projects that can be approved and where things can go was actually formed in the late 90s, early 2000s, approved in early 2000s, and is supposed to sundown this year, 2024. So some people have asked, well, why can't we keep using that same plan? I'm like, well, I think things have changed a little bit since the late 90s here in Norman, so we may want to be basing our sort of future plans on what's happening, you know, now, more recent information. And then the third reason that this kicked off when it did was the announcement of the Access Oklahoma plan, the turnpikes that are supposed to be coming to Cleveland County. The thought was, if those turnpikes come, which it looks like they're going to, we want to make sure that we have at least some agency over what happens along those turnpikes. We don't want it to just maybe we don't want it to look just like I-35 does in some sections. We want to be able to say what can and cannot go around that turnpike so that we don't lose like the character of Norman, for lack of a better way of saying it. So those were kind of the 3 drivers that led to this process getting initiated last September. So one of the things that we determined as a group last fall was, so what are kind of going to be our guiding principles for how we make decisions about what goes into the plan? And we came up with these 10 development principles. And so I'm not going to read through them all, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them. So the first thing that's up there is use urban services efficiently. So what that means is like water, sewer, trash pickup, and what have you. I mean, how far do we want to build our water lines out there, for example, to be able to bring water to new homes that are developed? I mean, north of Rock Creek Road, those stop at 24th Avenue Northeast. They go a little bit further when you get south of Robinson. But so in order to build housing going east, we need to extend city services. And what does that look like from the city's perspective, from just how we can grow perspective? We also want to make sure that we're promoting diverse housing options. This is a really key point for some of us. We don't want to continue seeing just like single family homes on lots filled with, like with lawns, right? That's not going to get us where we need to get in terms of accommodating a lot of different diverse housing options for people. So there is definitely an ethic to try to densify housing, which I know makes some people like, ugh, like no one wants that in their backyard, and also do as much infill development as possible so that we're good stewards of our land. So that's, which is the next thing. So we're really trying to observe some of these principles as we make decisions about where we're going to allow certain kinds of development going forward. I'm going to say right now, just so that it's clear, what we are not able to do is say, the arena is or is not a good idea, or this housing development is or is not a good idea. That's not our job. Our job is to look at the city as a whole and figure out where growth should go. Does that make sense? And we cannot stop the turnpike, if any of you are wondering. This plan cannot stop the turnpike. So the first component is land use. This is not the same as zoning, but this basically is a plan to figure out where do we want to densify? Where should we have low density housing? Where should we plan for our commercial corridors to grow? Where should we look at mixed use housing? I'm sure some of you have heard that there may be a rapid transit coming through Norman. What does transit-oriented development, which we don't even really have in Norman, look like along a commuter rail, for example? So that's what we're kind of trying to map out in terms of land use. And I will say this is complicated. And in fact, it got so complicated that we formed a working group to kind of look at what the consultants had sort of projected for us in terms of land use. And we have a lot of the committee members really know their stuff in terms of what's happening in every single section of land in Norman. And so they're making sure that they're going through section by section in the city of Norman to making sure that there's not conflict between what the consultants say should go there and what's actually already on the ground or already platted or ready to happen. So then that's what the steering committee does. So out of the steering committee then come five subcommittees, all that are chaired by members of the steering committee. So the first is housing, and housing is obviously looking at one of the key drivers. How are we gonna fit 23,000 more units in the city of Norman and still preserve some of the things that people think make Norman special, protect the quality of the water in Lake Thunderbird, which is already an impaired lake, and what have you. And so this has ended up being probably the most complicated piece, is figuring out where to put all the housing units. And so the subcommittee is chaired by one of our steering committee members, and then made up of another group of citizens that include like the executive director of food and shelter, as well as developers, bankers. So it's a cross-section of people that all have a different sort of piece of the puzzle, for lack of a better way of saying it, when it comes to looking at housing for Norman. So this is another way that citizens are engaged. The second subcommittee is transportation, and this includes everything from walking and biking to rapid transit and everything in between. And obviously this committee in particular has been looking at the turnpike issues. The third is parks, trails, and culture. Actually, that started out just as parks, but we quickly added that trails need to be a big part of it. And when it comes to community input, there there are several things that really bubble to the top, and one of those is trails. People want multimodal trails. They want those trails to be connected. They want to be able to go from one neighborhood to another safely on trails, and they want to be able to get out to Lake Thunderbird on trails, which is all really, really cool. Wouldn't that be amazing if you could get like on your bike in Castle Rock and ride it safely all the way to Lake Thunderbird? That would be amazing. And then also looking at a lot of our cultural assets here in Norman as well. So they have done an assessment, I was actually kind of blown away by this, of every single park in Norman and cultural asset and trail, and using that as a foundation from which to build. So this is another one of the subcommittees, and the master plan will come out of this. And then, of course, we get to some of the extremely complicated stuff like water. How do we make sure that we have enough water to supply the increased population in Norman? Many of you may know that we're on the 100th meridian here, which means we are at the beginning of where the land becomes arid. Water will continue to be something that we're going to have to figure out how to make sure that our citizens have on a reliable and regular basis, even during peak times. The amount of work that this committee has done has been actually extraordinary. They've traveled all over, they've met with folks in Oklahoma City to figure out how much of our shortage Oklahoma City can reliably fulfill even during times of drought and persistent drought, which is something that we have to factor in. And even considering things like what would it take to get the citizens of Norman comfortable with indirect potable reuse of water? Does anyone, John?
Yes.
Do you know what that means?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Oh, you're comfortable. You're just saying uncomfortable? Is that what you mean?
I'm and I know, so.
Okay. So do you want to explain what it is?
Oh,
Yeah, go for it. I mean, I can, but
well,
like.
we're in the same study session.
Right, yes, of course.
Basically, what we reuse is all the water that starts at the water treatment facility, we use it, and then we flush it and stuff, whatever, so it goes back to the water reclamation facility there on Highway 9, and then they clean it, they do some fancy things, and then they dump it into the Canadian River. So total reuse basically is they do a few more things, and it'd be a big infrastructure bill, and then they take that and they pump that back into Lake Thunderbird, so we are literally recycling our water. Is that all right?
Yes, you nailed it, actually. Yeah, give a round of applause. Yes. So right now, like when we treat water that we have already used, it goes into the Canadian River, which means we're basically, I'm gonna put my the hat on of like a wastewater person. We're basically giving our product away to another community. It's basically the way to look at it. So like we're doing all the work to treat it, and then it goes down the Canadian River where, it never goes into our drinking supply again. There are some legislative things that need to happen, but then there's also obviously the public component of making sure that the public is comfortable with such a thing. So water and wastewater together are part of the same master plan, and that's what they're concerned with. It also means extending, you can't do like a lot of development. Right now, East Norman, we're all on wells and septic. We don't want to do 23,000 units with well and septic, right? In East Norman, that would not be good. And probably not legal either. So figuring out what are the most efficient ways to get water and wastewater to the next wave of housing development. And then the next is stormwater. We know that this has been a problematic thing in the city of Norman. We still do not have a stormwater utility, which is why we continue to have a lot of persistent problems during large rain events. And it obviously is one of the key things that affects the quality of the water in Lake Thunderbird. And it's one of the reasons that we have such an impaired lake. And so figuring out how to do stormwater, what's required of new developments, particularly those that go east, and try to solve these issues related to stormwater. So those are the other components. So one thing I did not say at the beginning is, unlike any community, according to our consultants, nobody has ever tried to do land use plus the 5 master plans at the same time. So we're the first community to try to do this. I will tell you it's complicated, and there's been challenges that were not foreseen. The theory behind it was if we do them all at the same time, they can kind of talk to each other, and stormwater can like talk to housing, transportation, all of this better informs what needs to happen at the land use level, right? But, you know, it's busy people, it's complicated, we're a very engaged community, there's a lot of discussion, lots of different visions for how things should look going forward. There is a lot of discussion and debate around how far east of 48th development should be allowed to go. It just gets very, very complicated. And now, of course, there's a lot of concern about what's happening along the turnpike, given the fact that the interchanges, most of them went away. So, so it is a complicated process because, you know, people are involved, but it's a lot to consider all at once. So we have had opportunities for community engagement. Most of that has been through listening sessions. I don't know what happened to that picture, but we did 7 community workshops back in March and April. We do surveys every once in a while. And just recently, Siobhan, my co-chair, and I did a listening session for the citizens of Ward 5 that came out of concerns, again, about what was happening with the turnpike. We will be doing more listening sessions again in December. Timing, definitely not ideal, but that's when they're going to be happening. And so that's when we'll be sharing basically the land use plan, where we are, as well as where we are with all of the different master plans. And people will be able to sort of react and give their feedback and what have you. Ultimately, all of this information gets packaged and will be either voted up or down by our group and then advanced to the Planning Commission, who will go through the same process. They may make modifications to what we do, and then it is the Planning Commission that will take it to the City Council that will approve or not approve it. I will tell you there's a lot of pressure at the city to make sure that this goes through. This was attempted in 2019 and failed. And so the city staff, I don't think they have it in them to go through another failure on this front. So we're working really hard to try to make sure that that does not happen. Which means like meeting with the council members every other month, like we do update sessions with them in small groups. So where we are now is we are kind of honing in on the kind of the end of the land use. We have one more major discussion that'll be next month, and then we'll basically come to the public and say, here's what we've got. What is your reaction? After that, there'll be some editing that happens. We'll do a final draft, and that's supposed to get to the Planning Commission in February. Those of you on the Planning Commission, I know there's at least one of you in here. Be prepared for a lot of reading in February. So with that, I'm going to pause and see what questions that you have. Go ahead.
Saw an article sometime back that there was a master plan to upgrade Andrews Park. Is that a part of what you're doing? I haven't seen anything else after that.
So there is a master plan to upgrade Andrews Park that is separate but considered and part of. Like it was like its own like thing that happened. So it's referenced in the parks, culture and trails master plan, but that's already been done. So great question.
When's it gonna happen?
I don't know the timing on it. So that's a great question. Tom and then Dan.
Well, I don't think there's funding for it right now, so it's a plan that will need to be funded to actually happen.
And that goes for like a lot of the stuff that's gonna be in the plan. It's plans that are not funded.
So, like going to the turnpike, you know, I guess the discussion I'm hearing, not firsthand, is like, do you put on frontage roads or not? That affects what you guys do, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you really need to know what the answer to that's going to be before you all complete that.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, so right now, we're assuming no, because that's the email that I and lots of other people got from TJ Bill at the OTA. And so that's what we're basing our planning on. We've got to base on what is on the Access Oklahoma website. Siobhan and I actually met with representatives from the OTA at the beginning of the summer, just to kind of say, hey, do you guys have any idea what's going to happen here? And Norman, because we're trying to do this planning thing, to your point, Tom. And they basically said, what's on the website is what we know. When it comes to the north-south, we're not even thinking about that yet. So, yeah.
Will this have something to do with a Norman Forward 2? We voted in 2015, 15 years, so 2030, it would come back up. Some of the amenities you're suggesting will take a big tax chunk, so
Right.
are we looking forward to that? Is that part of this?
So I think where that is being talked about most is in the context of the Parks, Trails, and Culture Subcommittee. I don't know that, I don't think that there's like a funding recommendation in it, but I can't be sure. I have the draft. I haven't read through it yet. But yeah, I mean, it would be projects like that. That would be in the in that master plan, so.
When you're talking about, deciding what areas of town or whatever, certain type of housing and things like that will go, part of the issues, I guess, is the word, you have with that always, is the rights of the current property owners. When they bought a property under a certain zoning or code, then you flip-flop on it. Is there a lot of talk or consideration given to current property owner rights?
Right, yes, so here's what I can tell you. Number one is, this plan is not zoning. Zoning is the next step. You can't do zoning without a land use plan. So zoning and the subdivision regulations will come next. So that's just a process question. But to answer your question directly, like, so for example, I live out in East Norman. I'm on one of those 10-acre lots that people grumble about. And so even though right now I know that my property is identified to be a medium densely urban location in this next, which we're not, we're one house on 10 acres. Until I sell, I can stay there for as long as I want. I can deed it to my kids, and they can be the one house surrounded by whatever medium urban looks like out there. But when I sell it, then it goes to the next land use and the zoning that comes with that. Does that make sense? So as long as you're living in your house, nothing changes. Things around you may change if people around you sell, but what happens on your property does not. I will also say, with respect to the current landowner, so I know when people hear like high density, like you're like, oh gosh, I don't want the high rise next to me. Nobody wants that. I mean, if you're on on your own property. And so there is attention being paid to like gradually moving into. So like if you're on a lot by yourself, the idea would that then a high rise would not be put next to you, that there would be graduated up to like a more dense looking structure, for lack of a better way of saying it. And that's what we're trying to get into the policies on both the character area map and the land use map. So did I answer your question? Okay, good. I said a lot of words, I just want to make sure I answered your question. Go ahead.
You mentioned stormwater,
Mhm.
and I guess it's kind of a two-part question. Number one, are there other communities that we can role model, that are role models that have successfully dealt with stormwater? And the other second question is, can that water be reused for our benefit?
So the answer to your first question is absolutely yes. There's lots of examples, and in fact, when the Stormwater Committee back in the late 2010s, the two times that we were able to try to vote on this one, I mean, that's what they were looking at. They were basing both the projects as well as how to pay for those projects on what they had gathered from other communities and to try to make it as fair as possible to different types of landowners. So that's answer number one. Answer number two is we do reuse that water. Ultimately, depending on where you are in Norman, stormwater either goes into Lake Thunderbird or it goes into the Canadian River watershed. It's one of those two watersheds. The thing that you have to remember is no matter where you are, you're in a watershed. No matter where you are, you're in a watershed. And in Norman, we go to one of the two. If you're in the Lake Thunderbird watershed, ultimately that stormwater finds its way filled with leaves and trash and fertilizer and dog droppings and whatnot into our lake, which is part of the issue with stormwater, is getting people to clean up in their yards because it makes it a lot less dirty when it gets to the lake. Other questions? Stephen?
You mentioned failure a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What are the hurdles that you need to overcome?
What are the hurdles you need to overcome to not, to get
Yeah. I'm discovering new hurdles every day. I think one of the things, and one of our members at our very first meeting said we have to bring city council along, which was one of the wisest things that was said. And so we do meet with them every other month to kind of keep them apprised of what's going on. So I think that was strategy number one, right? I think, you know, there have been, I will say the process has been a little bit fraught at times. I'm like a clear process person, and so when it's not, it kind of makes me, so I think at the end of the day, it's going to be, can people compromise with what's there? And if they can't, then, you know, we may be stuck again. I don't know. This all comes down to compromise. I mean, we'll know that we've done our job if nobody is 100% happy. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's kind of it. Like, everyone's got to give up a little bit in order to make this thing work. And it's hard because we have a lot of extraordinarily smart, extremely passionate experts in the room, as well as citizens bringing their concerns constantly. And that's, like, I really wish that we had done more listening sessions like Siobhan and I structured a couple of weeks ago, because I think we would have had really good input, and I feel like the community would have felt a little bit more heard. So anyway, we're trying to play a little catch up now. Anything else?
Lucky enough to serve on the board.
Yes, I know you are. You want to talk about that at all?
Well, don't get me started. Please. It's been a fantastic process.
Stop. Here, use mine. Just move that one away so it doesn't go.
Been very impressed with the process. I think it's brilliant to do all these plans in conjunction. There is going to be tons of overlap, and we should save money and improve things even more so. Just thank you for all the work you put in. I think we're going to see great things. We've got, I think maybe our last meeting at Parks comes up in next month.
Second to last would be my guess, but.
Okay, well, they said it might not be the last, but it's been great all the way through. The level of expertise on the committees that I've seen is amazing. So, well done. I'm totally for this.
Thank you, I really appreciate that. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you all so much. Liz and Tom both have my email, so if you think of something that you want to get to me, feel free to get my email from them, and they can make sure that I get your feedback. Okay, thanks.
Well, I'll be honest, I've seen information about it, but I have not heard much of the in-depth parts of what's going on with names, so I think that was a very informative meeting. Thank you for being here and explaining it all to us and bringing the light to us, Ingrid. I appreciate that very much. Don't forget, there is Rotary after hours tonight at the Standard on Gray Street. There's plenty of parking on the side or in the area. Thank you, Tom, for bringing Kyle with you today. Kyle, hope you'll join us again. And Karina, thank you for bringing Katie. We're glad she came today. And welcome to the team of Norman Nerds. Peggy and Phil Moss, we appreciate y'all coming from Cross Timbers as well. And please, if you want to buy some tickets to support them, I appreciate you doing that. I would like to mention this right here. You might have noticed it, and I didn't mention it earlier. I want to make sure I had time and didn't get you out late. But my dear friend, Liz McCowan, got me a coffee bean. Everybody in this club knows when I have a coffee bean. But anyway, it was a very nice gift, and so it's going to be our mascot. If you have questions about it, come see me, and I'll tell you why I have a coffee bean. But I would tell you to go out and be a coffee bean in the community. I will see all of you, or as many as I can tonight, and y'all have a great week. We're adjourned.
Well, I know how they are. I mean, I don't know